Good morning. We have two students who are invited to speak to Methodist and Baptist churches. I understood you to say that we must never give churches the principles of the infinite way. Oh, no, I never said anything like that. No, I never said anything like that. Heavens. The only reason that I have for living on earth, only reason, is because the infinite way is the one way that's been discovered of getting these principles into every church on earth. There is no other teaching that can do it, because this is the only unorganized teaching. This is the only teaching that isn't exclusive, that somebody doesn't own a specialty to, and now that the books are in the Baptist bookshops, the Methodist bookshops, the Pentecostal bookshops, the Episcopalian churches, it's the infinite way that has to carry those principles there. The infinite way is in unity. The infinite way is in religious science. No other teaching can do that, because with any other teaching, you have to embrace the whole works that go with it. But with us, nobody has to embrace anything but principles. And that is the reason that magazines in India carry infinite way articles. That's the reason that a magazine in California is carrying infinite way articles. That is the reason why Mr. Hamblin recommends the infinite way. Because it is available to anybody and everybody, and they don't have to adopt us in order to have those principles. They're absolutely free. They don't even have to pay a royalty on them. There they are. Take them, they're yours. And so it is that what we are actually hoping for is that the principles of the infinite way will be practiced in every religious teaching on the face of the earth. As you know, I speak the end of August under the auspices of the Queen of Holland. And the reason is that they want to know about the application of spiritual principles to human affairs. Now, you see, that's our principle. And we're not claiming it, though, as a right, and they must join us in order to have the benefit of using it. No, we'll go there and offer it to them. It's a 3-day conference. And they'll have it free and do what they want. Well, they may have to purchase a book to read it in, but it won't break them. Now, and in the same way, we had a letter recently, and we were told that the Consulate General of Japan said that he feels that Mr. Goldsmith will have to someday give these principles in Japan. See that? Oh, no, we want them to have the principles. We only want to be sure that a student who's called on to give them knows them and doesn't mislead them or doesn't give them their concept of what the principles are. That's what we're particular about. We don't want our students accepting invitations to speak for Baptists or for Methodists or for anybody else, unless it is a student who so thoroughly knows these principles that when they voice them, that they're so absolutely correct that there cannot be a comeback. That's what I'm careful about. I'm careful that our students do not get up on platforms and talk what they think the infinite way is. Could you close that for 1 minute? Now you see then that we want these people to have the principles, but we want to be sure that they're the principles of the infinite way. The best way to give them those principles at this particular time is to read them to them out of a book, or to be sure that whoever it is that goes on the platform knows whatever principles they are voicing. And don't think that that's an easy thing. It's a difficult thing. It's easy for me because it isn't mine, it's coming through. But when you try to take what's out of my mouth and get my interpretation, you'll find that very often you miss entirely what I am thinking. And then it takes you, after you've heard it take 10 times, to say, now I understand what he means. And so it is. The next question, if meditation only was the preparation before these addresses, is it not possible that these principles might come through? Would it not be necessary to make what one was trying to say, a list, probably a review? Yes, never try to explain the infinite way from a standpoint of inspiration, because the infinite way isn't your inspiration. It can't come to you through inspiration. It's impossible. It's an impossibility. When truth touches your consciousness, when the Spirit itself has awakened you, if it means to give a message through you, you can give that message, but it won't be the infinite way. Oh no, it will be whatever message that Spirit which wishes to voice through you. Now, the Spirit is voicing the infinite way through me. And if you wish to repeat it, you will have to learn what the infinite way is and then repeat it. Now, I don't mean that you have to quote it in my words, but you'll have to know the principles. Once you know the principles, you naturally put them in the right words as they come out. But inspirationally, you can't bring forth the infinite way, because the infinite way is already a set of principles. All you can do is, in your own words or language, present those principles. But look how careful you have to be, that your words are revealing those same principles. Now, none of you will ever be inspired to spontaneously bring forth the message of the infinite way. You may be spontaneously inspired to bring forth truth. The Spirit is infinite. There's no limit to the message that Spirit can send forth into this world. There can be 100 more Christian sciences or infinite ways or unities. There can be 1,000 more. But each one will be so unique and different, even though the basic principle will be I. That there are going to be revelators until the end of time, just as there have been revelators from the beginning of time. The way in which the original Sanskrit documents present I is entirely different than the way Gautama presented it. And the way in which Gautama presented it is entirely different in the way Jesus presented it. And John is entirely different than Matthew, Mark, and Luke. But the I is the same. Do you see that? Now, once you know these principles, you don't have to write out a written speech and memorize it any more than if you know, let us say, the history of the United States. Except for a little memorandum of dates, you don't have to go up and read a written speech on history. You can get up and spontaneously teach the subject of history if you know it. You'll each put it in different words, but it'll be the same history. And you're not going to get it inspirationally, because you can't get the history of the United States inspirationally. You've got to have facts. but you can present it in an inspirational manner. Is that clear? But you can't speak United States history inspirationally. You have to speak it factually, but with inspiration. So it'll be with the infinite way. If you really learn the principles of the infinite way, you can present it inspirationally. It doesn't have to be a dead letter. But it'll have to be factual. The principles of the infinite way, what are they? This one power? This nature of error? None power? This realization of God as I, not something to be prayed to out here? The nature of prayer as we understand it, not as the world understands it? Those are the principles that constitute. And above all, what's the highest principle? That nothing in all of our books will ever heal a headache. That these are only statements until you go back inside and feel that. And then when that comes, the Spirit itself, you're a healer. Where else do you read that? Where else do you learn that? That no teaching can be true. No teaching can be true. A teaching can only be the truth about the truth, which sends you back within yourself until the Spirit of the Lord God is upon you. Then you are ordained to heal the sick, not by virtue of a diploma from the infinite way, not by virtue of the fact that you went through 10 classes. That does not qualify you to either heal or teach. You are not qualified until you can sit back and with your few basic principles, so that you don't go off on a tangent. You sit back and say, wait a minute now. I'm not trying to change humanhood. I'm not trying to heal. I'm not trying to change or improve or reform. I'm not monkeying around with this picture out here. First of all, I know that there's only one power, and that's the power of God, of Spirit. And I also know that I am that power, that it's all embodied here within me. And I know that what is appearing to me as the sin, disease, death, lack, limitation of this world is a suggestion or a temptation coming to my mind, coming to me through my mind, for me to accept. I know that I mustn't judge by appearances. I mustn't accept appearances. I know that all of this that's coming to me as a picture, as a suggestion, whether it's good or evil, is the human scene. It's not of the substance of God, has no law of God to sustain it. There are no material laws. There are no mental laws. For God is one, and God is law, therefore law is spiritual. A spiritual law can't cause disease or perpetuate it. There is no material law, and there's no mental law. There's only a law of God, a spirit, the law that I am. The law that I am is the law unto every appearance and every suggestion. What is the nature of error? Why, we know it's but the belief of good and evil. Yes, but that's two powers. There are not two powers. There's nothing in and of itself can be good or evil. For the quality of everything is in its substance, and I am that substance. God is the substance of all form. I am the substance of all reality. I. And this person that's coming to me. But it isn't a person coming to me. It's a concept of a person. What do I know about that person? They're only a name to me. Not even that sometimes. So who am I to judge them? All this that I've learned about them, that they've told me about themselves, all this represents concept. How do I know this? Because I know that I am that person. There's only one I, so there can only be one person. I am that person, and inasmuch as I think this of that person, I'm thinking it of myself. Oh, well, I'm certainly not going to think sin, disease, death thoughts about myself when I know that I'm sitting right here talking, thinking, being. No, I'm not dead. I'm not diseased. I'm not in sin. I am about my Father's business. And I am the only self there is, and I'm the self of me, and I'm the self of he, him, she, it. I am that I am. The truth I know about myself is the truth about you. And the truth I know about you is the truth about me. And the only truth I want to be truth is the truth that I already am. In the beginning I am. Before Abraham was, I am. And I will be with me unto the end of the world, and I will be with you unto the end of the world. For I am I. Now that I've known all these principles of the infinite way, and they are exclusively principles of the infinite way applied to healing, now I haven't done a thing except prepare myself. For now I have to be still. Now I'm ready for the still small voice, and all the power that there is in the still small voice. There's no power in the sin, there's no power in the disease, there's no power in the hurricane, there's no power in the volcano, there's no power in the dictators' minds, there's no power in wars or rumors of wars. All power is in the still small voice. So now let's have the still small voice. You see, that's where I have to be still. Speak, Lord, thy servant here. Now, when the feeling comes, when the release comes, now God is on the field. Now there's the principles of the infinite way. And you see how necessary they are as a foundation to lift you to the healing consciousness. But you see how useless they are if you don't sit there and wait for the still small voice. Well, there are no other teachings that give you this. They all give you a lot of truth in books, and then you're to believe that those truths will do something. They won't. Now, these are the principles that we are teaching. And do you not see that you cannot give these to those who are unprepared? For the only reason that what I've said this morning makes sense to you is because of all your past reading and background. Try to visualize what I've said going out into a room full of Methodists and Baptists. And you'll find out why you're going to get crucified in a hurry the minute you would say anything like this to them. How can they take it? They've never heard anything like this. They've heard about hell and damn fire, and they've heard about punishment for sin, and they've heard about what happens if you violate the Ten Commandments. And they've been told that you're a groveling worm or something like it. So what happens when you say, why, know ye not that ye are the temple of the living God? Whew! You really set something off. Now, to present our message to the world outside of us, you have to do it in the form of milk. Milk for babes. And that's why I recommend for these purposes practicing the presence and the art of meditation. Not that there isn't dynamite in them, but they'll never recognize it because they'll be reading it through their own background, and they'll have to grow to where they understand our interpretation. See that? Whereas if you give them the infinite way, which was never written for the world, that infinite way was just written because I thought that my own patients, those who had been with me for a long time, would like to know what it was that my healing work was founded on. And I knew that only those with a background could understand, and it's proved to be true. You can't hand this to a Methodist or a Baptist and have them understand it. It shocks them. Why, even the art of meditation has shocked some ministers. And certainly that's gentle. Very gentle. From our standpoint. But I have had lots of comments from ministers about, he says God is it. You think that was something shocking, wouldn't you, that God is it? Well, believe it or not, they think God is a male. You wouldn't think so at this stage of the world, but they do. They think God is a male. And you come along and say God isn't a male, and you'd be surprised at the look in their faces. And the comments. Oh, I have some reviews of the art of meditation. This person says that God is it. This person says. He doesn't even have a name. So, please don't tell the principles of the infinite way as we are talking here, but give it as the milk of the word. Explain that meditation is the way to find contact with God, or that practicing always giving acknowledgement to God, acknowledge Him in all thy ways, that these are the ways to develop spirituality. All of those little baby steps with which our writings are filled. Then when it comes to the deep principles of the nature of God and the nature of error and the nature of prayer, avoid them as you would the plague. Let them discover them gently, gradually in the writing. As a rule, when I talk to mixed groups, you'd be surprised how I can even adulterate the milk. Because it has to be that way. Now, we have a question. On that higher plane of consciousness, you will never meet those who have lived and died. They have always been immortal, from the Master speaks. When a person passes from this experience, I mean the average human, they are no different after the experience of passing than they are here. And so, if you contact them, you will contact them as human beings. That's called the spiritualist plane or the psychic plane. And as a rule, if you do contact them, they'll probably tell you, do you remember when we visited grandmother together, or the red dress that I wore when we went to the picnic, or the day it rained? The conversation, if you have one, will be on that level. Or the case that I told about where a man was told to buy stock in a company. Now, there wasn't anything more noble about that or spiritual than if the man hadn't passed on. It was just all on the human level. And so it is that when you do, if you ever do make contact with a person who has passed on, as a rule, it will be someone who is just as human now as they were when they are on earth, and the nature of your contact will be that human. They may tell you not to go on vacation because there's going to be danger. They may warn you not to take this airplane trip because it's going to fall down. That's all on the human plane. They may advise you to buy stocks or sell stocks. They may advise you that a boom is coming or a depression is coming. They may tell you who's going to be the next president of the United States, because they may have a deeper knowledge of the activity of the mind. They may see deeper into the picture of the human mind. And so they may well tell you of not only events that have passed, but events that are to come. But it will still be on the human level, just as you can find people on this level right now who can tell you of coming events. I remember in one of our class trips to Portland, meeting a man who was very psychic. And he said, "Oh, this will interest you." It will? Yes, in April, you're going to have a new source of income. He said, "Oh, it's not anything too large, but it's very nice, and you're going to welcome it, and it'll start in April." That's very nice. And you know what turned out to be? The tape department opened in April, and the first income came in the month of April from the tape department. So he was absolutely correct. See that? Now, he had no influence on making it happen, no influence on stopping it happening. He just saw a little ahead in time. Well, we have people who, Mr. Baruch, who knows when the stock market's going to jump up or down intuitively. There are people who know when cotton is going to jump up or down, or wheat is going to jump up or down. Intuitively, they know that. And if they're in the business, they develop that intuition. Well, they still have it if they pass on, and they'll find somebody back here to tell it to. Now, that's the human plane. Now we come to something entirely different. When an individual is spiritually illumined, and we'll go all the way back to whether it's Krishna, Buddha, Lao Tzu, Jesus, John, and in our modern days, I would include Mrs. Eddy. If you ever make contact with them, you'll never, never hear anything of a human nature. Never. They'll not be concerned with you as a human or what you're doing as a human. They'll never recognize you as a human, and you won't know them as a human. But from them or through them, you will receive inspirational truth, spiritual truth. You may even hear, "God is love," or "Know ye not, I am always with you." It'll always be something on that plane that you expect to receive from your teacher, or from your ideal of what a teacher should be. It'll never come down to the level of blaming you for yesterday's faults or talking to you about tomorrow. It'll always be just, "I am with you," or "Trust the Spirit," or "There is a spirit in man. Acknowledge him in all thy ways." And then you'll know that you're not dealing with anybody on the human level, but someone who has left the human level and doesn't live in it. Now, there are three stages of man: the body, the mind, and the soul. The materialist lives in his body. He gets all his pleasures and all his pains out of his body. He gets his strength and his weakness in his body. He gets his health and his disease in his body. He gets his life and his death in his body. That's where he lives. All his sensations come from the body, good and bad. But then civilization evolves, and we come to the individual who lives in the mind. They study books. They study music. They study art. They study literature. They get their pains and their pleasures up there in the mind. And they get their health and their sickness there too. They commence to realize now that it isn't my body that's sick, it's my mind that's sick. If I clean my mind, I'll have a clean body. See that? And they begin then to exchange their old concepts of materiality for these higher ideas of right thinking and wrong thinking. See that? Now they're on a higher level. And they keep going on in that level up to the place where they recognize the impersonality of evil and of good. And they don't live in personalities anymore. They don't call you good or bad. They recognize now that good or bad is functioning and you're merely an instrument. Today it may be for good health and tomorrow for bad health. Today for friendship and tomorrow for hate. But they're no longer personalizing. They're not living in personal sense anymore. Now they're living on a higher plane that recognizes good and evil as impersonal. They're living on a higher plane where they recognize that health and disease isn't personal, has nothing to do with you. It's this universal belief. It's this universal concept of being. It's this subliminal perception that's continuously, invisibly, and inaudibly knocking at the door of your consciousness. That's why Mrs. Eddy was led to say, right, stand porter at the door of thought, admitting only such conclusions as you wish made manifest in your body. That's living on the mental level of life, where you can close your mind to error, and you can open your mind only to good, dwelling in it all the time. When you are at that level, you are in the mental level of life. If you pass on in the material state of being, even if you make contact with anyone, it'll only be on that level, and it'll be probably to tell them, do you remember when I fell down and hurt my leg, or when I wore a red dress or a red scarf? But if you pass on in the mental level, you may start communing about art, literature, or something else. As a matter of fact, an artist or a writer or somebody finds an instrument on this plane to become a hand for them and a brain. And that's where we have automatic writing, and that's where some of our artists and writers come from. Somebody on the other plane is using them. Yeah? Therefore, it isn't their own. They are just the tools, and they give you what's given to them. And very often you will find, and this is more especially true in the occult realm, where they have masters, or they have an Indian guide, or they have some other kind of a guide, that they're absolutely a nothingness. And this person over on the other side is using them and telling them what to do and what to write and what to teach and so forth, or even using their hand. They'll hold their hand still, and something will start to move it. It's called automatic writing. Now, there's automatic writing and there's automatic thinking. There's automatic painting. There's automatic poetry, in which an individual just listens and somebody over on the other side does the dictating. And virtually you become an automaton, you become a dictaphone, you become a tape recorder, you see, and you just take down that which comes through you. And all of this is on the mental level of life. Now, to the spiritually illumined, you pass out of both the physical sense of life and the mental, and you begin to live in what is called the soul. That's your true being, I. And when you are living in there, you have a mind and you have a body, and they are your instruments. You're not somebody else's instrument, but your mind and your body is your instrument, and you're living in the soul. That is why you can be in this world. You can enjoy good food, you can enjoy a nice automobile trip, you can enjoy a nice vacation, but they are absolutely unimportant, because it makes no difference what you're doing with the mind or body. You're only doing it as a sufferer to be so now. That's not your life at all. Your life is up here in the soul, and when you tabernacle, you're tabernacling with the soul of a person. You don't care about their mind, you don't care about their body, you don't care about their art, you don't care about their literature. You feel in them an integrity. You feel in them a soul. And even if they're not awake to it yet, you know it. You can feel it, you can see it. And that's why very often you say when you meet a person, that's a great soul, or this one has potentiality, or this one must be on the path. You have contacted their soul and recognized it. Sometimes you meet a child and you say, well, that's an old soul. How do you know? All you've seen is the body. No. Your soul has perceived their soul. See that? That's what I meant last night about recognizing literature. How do you know when a book is truth and when it isn't? Now, if you had only your mind and your body, you'd never recognize truth. If you yourself haven't got a soul, I mean by that, if you haven't consciously gotten into your soul, you will no more recognize a message of truth than the college professor who said to me, oh, mysticism, there is no such thing. I know that that's only bunk. He knows that he's living in his brain. Right? And because he's living in his brain, he has no way of recognizing a soul. There's no way of recognizing a soul teaching or a Jesus Christ or a Buddha. That is why one Christian Science teacher said, oh, this Joe must be crazy. He uses the name Buddha, Jesus Christ, and Mrs. Eddy all on the same page. But you see, he's looking out from where? From his mind. He hasn't ever felt the soul. He talks about all Orientals as pagans. Right? He hasn't ever felt the soul. Doesn't know anything about it. Looks out from the mind. See that? So it is. That's what I referred to last night. Why are you following the infinite way? Why has it drawn you to itself? It's only another book. You, at your level, have felt something of its level, and you want to get up there. That's what's drawing you. You already feel it, and you know it's right, and you know it's ultimate, and you want to get there. That's exactly the way it is when you're living in the soul. You meet people, and you want to tabernacle with them. Those are the ones you want to be with. The Master says you leave your mother and your brother and your sister. You know, human relationships are nothing. Absolutely nothing. Who wants to be around a friend or a relative? Unless they're on this level. See that? And if that isn't your life, you're not interested in your soul. You're interested in the other. This is not a blanket license to throw your mother in the ash can. No, but you can take care of your relatives financially or some other way without giving yourself to them. So it is with this. Let it never be said that a student of the infinite way neglects a human duty or a human obligation or tries to close their eyes, not only to their family, to their community. I've written this in the writing. If you are living in a community, you have a right to see that your Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts are supported or your something else. Because if you want to love your neighbor, you have to love them on their level too, as well as on yours. Because all of them can't reach yours. Therefore, you have to provide for them. But don't go out knocking on doors to raise funds for them. Don't give yourself to them. Give that level of them that they want. That's your check. See that? That's what they need. That's what they want, because that means life and death to them. And they can get 1,000 people in the neighborhood to do that work. But you can't be spared from living in your soul, because you are the one that makes all that unnecessary eventually. You're the one that's ultimately going to make it possible for them to do away with benevolences. Because such a high state of government is going to evolve in your soul that when men adopt it, they won't need charities anymore. Such a man was Plato. Plato, who could live up there in the soul and yet vision a government. See that? So it is with us. We don't go out campaigning. I did to my sorrow once. But we don't have to go out campaigning. What we have to do is make campaigning unnecessary. And we're succeeding, because from the old days of barnstorming around the country, we're getting gradually to where there'll just be a few speeches on the air. And eventually that'll be done away with. But we are the ones helping to make that possible by the ideals of government that we live with. But while you're doing that, on cloud 9, remember there are people on cloud 3. And so send them down some of those crumbs from your table. Mail them a check regularly every month for something or other. And don't neglect your family. Send them the check too, or whatever it is they need. But keep yourself. Keep yourself for yourself. Remember that eventually you are rising above living in your body or living in your mind. And if you be lifted up, you'll draw all those others with you. But you'll never, if you come down to living in their bodies and in their minds, you'll never raise them up out of them. So, never attempt to reach masters on the other planes. Never attempt to reach any consciousness but your own. Your own is infinite. And that's the only one you have to contact, is your own. It may be that in contacting your own, it draws to you some temporary teacher on this plane or some other plane. But it won't be a man or woman who will give you human advice. It will be a state of spiritual consciousness that will illumine you with truth. Never be any harm if you contact Jesus Christ, only don't try to. Don't try to. That may not be your teacher. You may be wasting a whole lifetime. Contact your own soul. Just close your eyes and go within and realize the Father within me, He doeth the works. I and my Father are one. All that the Father hath is mine. I am about my Father's business. God is my teacher. God instructs. God illumines. God leads, guides, and directs. And where is God closer to me than breathing, nearer than hands and feet, and I need be satisfied with nothing less than God. Then, of course, God may appear to us as the consciousness of Jesus Christ, because God is the consciousness of Jesus Christ. God may appear as the consciousness of Buddha or Lao Tzu or Shankara or John, because God is the consciousness of those individuals, and they are not two, they're only one, appearing to us as. And so it is that you, when you go within and you say, I'm absolutely pure in my desires. I want nothing but God, the realization of God, the experience of God, God contact, you may be picked right up and put down in an infinite way class. Because that is the level of God appearing to you as. See that? And that is why it has been that some students have come to me and I have been their teacher. And the reason is that they haven't known me and didn't think of me and couldn't think of me. All they thought of was God. And they walked into a library and picked up a book by Joel Goldsmith, or somebody came to them the next day and mentioned it, or they dreamed the name that night. I have had 3 people come to me in my lifetime who didn't know me, who dreamed the name Joel, and then found out afterward about me. The first one didn't dream Joel, dreamt Goldsmith. That was right here in New York City. For all I know, she may still be here. Her name was Smith, Mary Smith, and she was the chairman of the Christian Science Prison Committee. She had charge of all the prison activities for Greater New York. She never knew me, never heard of me, had never come in contact with me in any way. And this night she dreamed the name, ahead of it, her first reader over on Riker Island Prison had told her that he was moving out of the state and he would have to give up and she would have to get a substitute. And evidently in those days, it wasn't easy to find first readers for this prison work. Firstly, they had to be a journal practitioner, and secondly, they had to have passed through a lot of tests. Now, when she learned that she had to have a first reader, she went to her room that night before retiring and what we call did her work, went to bed and dreamed the name Goldsmith. Never heard the name, didn't know who it was or where, what. Said, well, I suppose in due time I'll find out. A few days later, a man came to me and he said, I'd like to go on vacation and I am an usher in the Christian Science services. Would you substitute for me? I said, waiting in prison. I never heard that there were any Christian Science prison services at that time. And then he explained about them. And he was ushering down at the tomb. So I said, yes, that would be quite an experience. So he went down to Mrs. Smith and he said, I want to go on a 2-week vacation. And I found a substitute who will usher for me, and he's a journal practitioner. What's his name? Goldsmith. Oh, no, you don't. No, you don't. He's no usher. He's my first reader. I dreamed him. Okay? She called me on the telephone. He gave her my address. I know. She called me and said, report Sunday morning at Riker Island Prison to be first reader. And then she told me afterwards that she had broken every rule in her own rule book. You're supposed to go before a board and read. The board is supposed to check you with your church. Then you get a 1-month temporary appointment. If you've proven satisfactory, you're given a 3-year appointment. And all I did was report Sunday morning, never saw anybody, including Mrs. Smith, and I had a 3-year appointment right from the start. See that? Now, twice since then, I have had students who have come to me who've dreamed the name Joel, and then a few days later came across a piece of Goldsmith literature, infinite lay literature. Now, they were not looking for Joel or Goldsmith. See, they were seeking God, and that's the way God appeared. At that particular instant, let's call it that that's the way fulfillment appeared. The fulfillment of their need. Now, it is in that same way that God has always been my particular goal. I had no side issues. Nevertheless, if you read that piece of verse in the letters, the what? The inner self. Originally it was called the mystical Christ. But my Christian Science friends didn't like the term mystical. So we call it the inner self. Now, where did that come from? Read it and see if you can tell where it came from. Because you will know in reading it that I do not know such language, that I do not know how to write in that way. You will know that that had to come right from where it says it came, the Master. It came right through from the Master. There wasn't any question in my mind when it was happening, and the whole style of it will tell you that that wasn't done in the 20th century. Now, you may have experiences like that, but remember, don't go around looking for them, because they don't come every day. Once in a lifetime, twice, 3 times in a lifetime. Some special occasion, it might pop up. Never if you look for it. You can count on it most assuredly when you want no side trappings. When you seek the kingdom of God within your own being, then it can appear to you as your teacher, it can appear to you as the book, it can appear to you as any form. But you always know when it's right. It won't waste any time talking to you about human things. It will only speak to you divinely of spiritual things, of spiritual impulses. Oh, you know, there's such an occasion as that in Mrs. Eddy's life, so ye my Savior. You know, that's a direct inspiration. No man or woman could write that thing. Never, never, never. That has to come forth out of inspiration itself. That answers that. What do they teach in the Christian Science Metaphysical College? I've never been there. I imagine it doesn't differ much from other class instruction because it's all based on Mrs. Eddy's writing. There are a few things told in that college that are not told to students that come out of the life of Mrs. Eddy. I'm thinking of one at this moment that my teacher told me when he went through metaphysical college. He went through with Mr. Gilmore, who was one of the great editors and lecturers, and they had about one of the least inspired and inspiring teachers that's been known in the movement. And it had reached the fourth day. There were only 6 days, but they had reached the fourth. And my teacher and Mr. Gilmore walked out and said, "Will you tell me what we're doing in this class?" I could have picked people out of my practice who could have done better than this. And Mr. Gilmore said, I don't know what we're here for, but I did my work thoroughly. I know something good is going to come out of it. And the very next day, their teacher read from a letter that Mrs. Eddy wrote to a student. And this letter said, "Always remember that God is not to be used as a greater power to get rid of lesser powers." And they both agreed that's why they were in that class. They were forever freed of trying to use God for something. See that? And you can see that that was inspiring to me, because that's never been forgotten in the infinite way. God is not to be used as a greater power to get rid of lesser powers. God is the only power. Do you see that? So it is. When you don't have the ambition to go to metaphysical college, when you don't have the ambition to be a teacher or a practitioner or a leader, and I've said over and over again that it's sin to desire those things, when your only ambition is to know Him aright, whom to know aright is life eternal, then these other things happen. And sometimes in the most unlikely places or through the most unlikely individuals. But you must keep free of desire. This desire to be a teacher, this desire to be a practitioner, this desire to heal people, I tell you, it is the sin of the ages. It's the do-gooder sin. It's the crime of good humanhood. There's only one rightful goal for a spiritual aspirant, and that's to know God. Now, what God does with you after you know God, just think how many things God could do. God could remove you out of this entire human experience, out here in the world, to some faraway island, some faraway mountaintop, some faraway seashore, and seat you there for the benefit of prayer, to be an instrument through which God comes into human consciousness. You may never have contact with a human being. You may never directly heal a human being. But if you are doing nothing more than letting that flow, somebody out in the world is being healed, saved, redeemed, uplifted. Why do you think it is that at this very moment I am working with 3 men in 3 different penitentiaries? Whatever made them reach out and write me letters? I don't know any more than you do. I only know that I received the letters. I have the faintest idea what prompted them or where they heard about me. This is not in Hawaii. This is here in the States. Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and California prisons. Why? What made these men reach out? Well, basically, there must have been something with them reaching out to God. That's where it must have begun. They were reaching out to God. Then, because they were reaching out to God in some way or other, they probably either got a hold of a piece of infinite way literature or somebody wrote them, and then the contact was made. But basically, do you not see that it would have done them no good to want Joel? No, it wouldn't have done a bit of good. They had to basically want God. Then, because at this particular point, they cannot open themselves to receiving God direct, they are led to receiving an intermediary. That's where mediation comes in. I have letters from people all the time telling me they don't believe in it. I had one the other day from one that said, of course, no one person, no matter how spiritually illumined, can help another. Of course, she says, in her ignorance. So, and that's what I wrote her. I can well understand that in your present state of ignorance you would say of course to that. But oh, how different it'll be someday if you ever are illumined. So it is. There are many people who go to Lourdes and are not cured. You know why? Because they go to Lourdes to be cured. They forget that what they're going to is God. There are some who do get cured. And I'll bet that if you could examine what controls their desire is that they're really going to God and really feeling that God can be better localized there than somewhere else. And they're right. God can better be localized in a church than in a brothel. Not that God is absent from the brothel, but it's so much easier to realize in the church. Now, if we keep ourselves completely pure inside, by which I mean make God our sole desire, the realization of the kingdom of God, be sure that we don't want it for a purpose, not even the wonderful purpose of healing people. Because after all, you'll find that isn't as wonderful as it seems after you're there. It's only one of those way places. It's a necessary one. I wouldn't be without it until I'm lifted out of it. I love it. But I recognize it not as a goal. It's only one of those things that help me show myself and others that this is the spiritual path. This is the way. That's all it is. The goal is that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly by finding God, by having the God realization, the God experience. Then, when you have no other desire and are sure that you don't want it for any purpose, then when you attain what you're seeking, you will be directed into the purpose that you are to fulfill. And you may be just as shocked as I was to find out the way it is, because little did I ever dream that my way would be as a practitioner. And even when The Infinite Way was written, I certainly never dreamed that I'd be a teacher or a lecturer. That's furthest from my thought. Yet that's the way it evolved. You wonder, is it the best way? And no, I tell you, it isn't. I can think of a much better way, only I haven't been given the grace to attain it. And that's to sit on a mountain peak and just be the instrument through which God's grace flows impersonally. But evidently this isn't the time for it in my experience, so I have to carry it through in this way. Now, many times people say, why don't you sit in Hawaii and let people come to you there? There aren't that many people that can break their family ties or that can spare that amount of money at a given time. And it is for that reason that I'm sent out to where people can find it without money and without price, or at least with so little that it's no inconvenience to them. And so by going around the world, there are people that can find it without money, or with certainly a tiny, tiny little bit of it. Whereas if I sat in Hawaii, only the few who could arrange to get away from business or get away from their family ties or had enough money could reach there. And that's not really fair. That's not really right. Until the time comes when God says your time out in the world is through, now sit here for those few. Well, here we are, and our, I have another word, and that is this. Please remember that the healing work takes place at the point of contact. So when you wake up in the morning, if there's an air raid alarm, that's the point of contact for your realization that where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And if the news report isn't what it should be, that is your point of contact, and that is where you bring the Spirit of the Lord God into expression. And so it is that whenever anything, I'm speaking now for this group, that is to touch your community, your state, your city, your nation, or the world, touches your consciousness, it is at that minute that you are supposed to bring the impulse into manifestation that dissolves the picture. Thank you. Thank you.